A man alleged to be a Chinese spy with close links to Prince Andrew has been barred from entering the UK.
His trade, he now has the potential.
A man alleged to be a Chinese spy with close links to Prince Andrew has been barred from entering the UK.
Prince Andrew, a royal plagued by scandal.
You're an embarrassment, sir.
Prince Andrew, are you resigning?
With a playboy lifestyle and a taste for the finer things.
Andrew revels in money and status. He likes being a prince. He likes being the Duke of York.
I think if you're born with a silver spoon in your mouth, maybe you want the entire dinner service.
But to keep up that lifestyle requires an enormous amount of money.
Has that money run out?
How can this guy who doesn't have a job, who's been stripped of his royal allowance, where is the money coming from?
Andrew's expenses are eye-watering.
What is an extravagant lifestyle?
Royal Lodge's costs are about £400,000 a year for its upkeep.
Rent is something like 260 grand a year.
When accused of serious crimes, he paid off the woman who made the claims.
The sum was £12 million, that was the rumour.
Where has the money come from?
The prince may no longer have an official public role, but people still want answers.
It's been a great problem over the years trying to sort of separate fact from fiction when it comes to Andrew and money.
Just who is bankrolling him?
Look, Andrew's a prince, okay? He's never going to be skint, but he likes being around rich and powerful people.
What job is this you've got?
He's a man with lots of fingers and lots of pies.
And where did all the money go?
He just loved to spend money.
The royals at Christmas, a familiar festive event. But this year, one regular was missing. Prince Andrew found himself left out of the Sandringham celebrations.
It was made clear that Andrew, rather than putting the decision on to the king to uninvite him, Andrew should do the decent thing and step back and not attend.
They're not quite putting them in a dungeon in the Tower of London, but it's not far off it when they say, we don't want you at Sandringham for Christmas.
But why wasn't Andrew there? Many of the prince's problems revolve around money. Not only has he been physically frozen out of the royal fold, but also financially. With reports last year suggesting King Charles has cut off the Duke's allowance, thought to be £1 million per year. Times might be tough for Andrew, but the prince has always had a taste for the finer and more expensive things in life. Born the 19th of February 1960, he grew up in a world of wealth and old money. The second-born son and supposedly favourite of his mother, Queen Elizabeth. Along with the younger brother Edward, as well as older siblings Anne and, destined one day to be king, Charles.
He may well have had money when he was born. The way the royal family operate is through trusts. There are different figures given, but the fact is he inherited money through trust funds from particularly his grandmother, the Queen Mother.
Andrew attended the elite school Gordonston in Scotland, joining in 1973, when the price would have been in the region of £700 a year. That's around £9,500 in today's money. There he rubbed shoulders with the children of high society.
By looking at the whole life, you get a sense that he's always wanted to live beyond his means. He was at Gordonston. There were a lot of very rich people there, oligarchs, the sort of oligarch types. When he was at school, he wanted to mix with the very rich international set there. He wants the good things in life and he thinks he's entitled to them.
After finishing his premier education, Andrew followed in his father's footsteps and enlisted in the Royal Navy in 1979. The daily rate then for someone of his rank would have been around just £5.
That's my helicopter flying over at the moment. I should go. I think this is almost time I should go.
But Andrew wasn't in it for the money. After serving as a helicopter pilot in the Falklands War, he returned home to a hero's welcome from a jubilant crowd. The euphoric moment was captured in this historic footage.
I remember the homecoming with his mother and the crowds were out there, and his mum was so very proud, the Queen. And we thought, my God, not only is he a working royal, he's actually a bit of a hero as well. And people adored him.
The prince doesn't pay for his trips to exotic places, but then he couldn't afford to. He hasn't been well off by royal standards. Until now, he's been getting by on a mere £90 a week pocket money. But today it gets better.
Andrew's fortunes changed when he officially became a fully fledged working royal, a job he took on with visible enthusiasm, as shown in this footage from 1983.
Although Prince Andrew may be new to the royal round of engagements, he carried off this one with a good deal of charm that wasn't missed on the girls. The organisers of a sports display hadn't forgotten the prince's reputation with the girls. 12 of the most shapely danced before him, and the prince's face said the rest.
And Andrew's new working royal status came with an annual tax-free allowance.
Prince Andrew was exposed to huge amounts of money at a really young age, and he got around £250,000 a year.
Obviously, it's a lot of money to people sitting at home thinking, oh, I wish I had that. But that takes into account travel expenses, that takes into account the job, employing people. So it's not a lot of money. I think there was a time when people thought him to be an asset to the royal family.
That made him somebody that everybody wanted to look at. And during that time, it was really when tabloids started to give people a bit of a moniker. They'd give them a title. And Randy Andy stuck with him forever.
Randy Andy is the best known. The prince has a practiced eye for the ladies, and his romantic adventures have been well publicised.
As a single man, Prince Andrew was one of the most eligible bachelors in the world. He was frequently spotted out with a string of models and actresses, someone who liked to live life fast and liked to live it surrounded by wealthy, famous individuals.
It felt like he was being a little bit more ostentatious, and people would say, he was partying, going out, and just having a good time. And when you party and go out and have a good time as a member of the royal family, you are spending a lot of money.
The Playboy Prince met his match when, in 1986, he married Sarah Ferguson. Their wedding list reportedly totaled a staggering £1.5 million. The couple would go on to have 2 daughters, Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie. But Andrew's role as spare meant his financial future was never as secure as his older brother's.
Prince Andrew has always had a taste for the high life. The big parties with supermodels and the ski chalets, the vast mansions. The problem is, as the second son, he didn't have the income to back this lifestyle up. He doesn't have the same pools of cash, effectively, to call on as his brother has. For Andrew, that's always been problematic.
If you're the sovereign, you have the Duchy of Lancaster estate, and that generates an income of over 22 million a year. If you're the spare, then you have to, make your own money in some ways.
Someone like Prince Andrew, everybody thinks has got lots and lots of money, but he didn't have a duchy. He didn't have money that people may have thought he had. So actually, in his head, he was probably thinking, well, actually, I can make some money from this and build my own personal wealth. And the best way to do so was to start carving his own business deals.
Coming up, Andrew tries making his own way in life and his own money.
He most certainly made some dodgy friends. People started to think that this role of trade envoy was much more about Prince Andrew furthering his interests.
But would his pursuit of big deals,
He wasn't happy with his role. He always wanted more.
ultimately lead to his downfall?
Who pays
3 million over the asking price for a house.
Today, Prince Andrew is a royal often associated with controversy. But that wasn't always the case. He was once a firm favourite with the public and celebrated war hero.
The Duke of York's flying days may be well and truly over, but as an ambassador for British trade, he now has the potential to carve out a more significant role for himself within the royal family.
5 years after a very public divorce from his wife, Sarah, Duchess of York. In 2001, Prince Andrew left behind a successful naval career and moved into the world of big business, with a role as the British trade envoy.
A trade envoy is someone whose job it is to bring business to the UK, so to promote the United Kingdom on the world stage as a great place to do business.
Andrew had gone pretty much as far as he could go in the Navy. I think he was slightly aimless. They didn't really know what to do with him. The government of the day came up with this idea that he could have some sort of ambassadorial role as a trade envoy.
The job didn't come with a salary, but during his 10 years in the position, Andrew certainly made the most of the perks.
He earned the nickname Air Miles Andy because when he was travelling around the globe as trade ambassador, he was on expenses. And there was one year he got something like, it was about 650 grand's worth of expenses. He would spend money on taking foreign dignitaries to play around a golf in a helicopter. There was one famous trip where he took somebody 50 miles in a helicopter. That was 5 grand.
His trips always seemed to go via a ski slope, a golf course, or a fancy resort. He absolutely spent the heck out of that role.
Travelling all around the world, having a fabulous time, people started to talk about was actually, is Andrew doing this for Great Britain? Or is he doing it for the monarchy? Or is he doing it for himself?
Andrew didn't have any issues with spending big, even if the taxpayer was footing the bill.
I mean, I suppose there's a problem in a way of perception, isn't there? People are having a hard time, there's a recession. Are you conscious of the fact that sometimes people do look at the royal family and see perhaps that privilege is being used to give them a lifestyle that people might think of as unreasonable?
Well, I have to ask the question, what is a reasonable lifestyle? It's not extravagant, I don't believe. It's not unreasonable if you are trying to maximize the time that we have, or I have, to be able to do what I do for not only business but also society in the UK.
The great British public were completely unimpressed by Air Miles Andy, about how much money he was spending as trade envoy. There was questions about, was he bringing in the amount of business that would qualify that? Nobody really knew. But he didn't really seem to care.
I think if you're born with a silver spoon in your mouth, maybe you want the entire dinner service. And I think that's what happened with Andrew. He wasn't happy with his role. He always wanted more.
He would say that all the expenses were totally necessary, of course, but very hard if you're in government or whoever's in charge of that to say to the Queen or to whoever, your lad's going a bit mad here, can you rein him in? Because Andrew couldn't be reined in. You know, he was a law unto himself.
The prince was even reported to have accepted gifts worth tens of thousands of pounds from some of his more dubious associates.
Through his role as trade envoy, he developed a tangled web of personal friendships with the contacts that he'd made. One of the most notable, Tarek Kaitouni, a convicted Libyan gun smuggler who had met through his role representing Britain in Libya as trade envoy, who was then invited to Princess Beatrice's 21st birthday party, at which he presented her with a £20,000 diamond pendant.
It did appear that he was using these trade missions for his own financial gain. And we could never get to the bottom of it all. We knew the people he was doing business with, we knew their reputations, but it's very hard to come out right and say, there's something dodgy going on here.
The prince denied ever acting on Katouni's behalf or having received personal gifts from him. But that wasn't the only questionable associate he was said to have made.
He had shown some distinct lack of judgment in some of the people he cozied up to, notably Colonel Gaddafi, the Libyan then dictator. His son, Saif, was a friend of Prince Andrew. He'd been involved with the son-in-law of the Tunisian despot who'd been overthrown in the early days of the Arab Spring. These judgment failures began mounting up, and people were questioning what added extra Prince Andrew was bringing to this role.
He most certainly made some dodgy friends. People started to think that this role of trade envoy was much more about Prince Andrew furthering his interests, furthering his financial gain, rather than promoting brand Britain on the world stage and encouraging trade with the UK.
Problem was, he was beginning to take on his own agenda, and he was beginning to tell the embassy the sort of people he wanted to meet, or rather the people that the people he was working for wanted to meet. Andrew would insist on having other meetings, often outside the embassy in hotels, with people who the diplomats didn't feel he should be meeting, and was certainly not in the interests of Great Britain. But basically, he knew he had a free pass, and he took great advantage of that.
I would say about a third, two-thirds maybe.
Ultimately, we never got down into the detail of just what did Prince Andrew's role generate.
Andrew's position was under heavy scrutiny.
You're an embarrassment, sir.
Prince Andrew, you're resigning.
And one big deal was about to raise some serious red flags. After being on the market for 5 years, in 2007, Sunninghill Park, Prince Andrew's former residence, was sold.
Sunninghill was the starter home that the Queen gave Andrew and Sarah Ferguson as a wedding present. It was never a very happy family home because almost, I think, within a year or so of them actually moving in, the couple had begun moves to separate. Andrew rattled around there for a while on his own, but the place was put on the market, and it remained on the market, unsold and unwanted, for the best part of 5 years.
Sunninghill had been listed for £12 million, but sold for a whopping £15 million, £3 million more than the asking price. The buyer? The son-in-law of the allegedly corrupt former president of Kazakhstan.
Why did a Kazakh billionaire, the son-in-law of the dictator of Kazakhstan at the time, pay Prince Andrew £3 million over the valuation of Sunninghill Park? Who pays £3 million over the asking price for a house?
This house had a look of a supermarket. You wonder how a billionaire in Kazakhstan suddenly thinks, I have to buy it. So, no, there was something went on there, and it wasn't good.
Begs the question why, and why foreign money was coming into Andrew's coffers.
Prince Andrew has always claimed there was nothing untoward about the sale of the house. He reportedly put the extra cash towards a £7.5 million refurb to his next home, Royal Lodge, where he moved in 2004. The Grade 2 listed property in Windsor Great Park, dating back to the mid-17th century, was once a former residence of the Queen Mother, and today would be worth around £30 million. But how will he afford it? Coming up, a promising business venture
Picture Palace, on the face of it, was very successful.
turns into an outright scandal.
You discover Picture the Palace Global. He has this 2% clause. How much did he get? Do we know? No, because they won't tell us.
Prince Andrew, having earned the nickname Air Miles Andy during his time as trade envoy, had failed to impress the public. And the role came under heavy scrutiny after his dubious acquaintances were revealed. Keen to leverage the connections he made while in the role, Prince Andrew turned to philanthropy.
You're from 3D Industries. Right.
In 2014, he created Pitch at Palace, a scheme designed to help young entrepreneurs start up their own businesses.
So Andrew set up Pitch at Palace. It was described as a dragon's den for entrepreneurs, where he would help businesses. He would bring businesses into the palace and they would pitch and they would, try to get funding. It was an admirable thing for Andrew to do. He was using his contacts, he was using his skills, he was using his charm.
Amazed. Hello, everybody.
We set this up as a one-off to encourage and help businesses. And then we discovered that when we'd finished doing it, the number of people who said, could we do it again? And I sort of said, well, of course we could do it again. And I looked at my staff and they said, 6 months' time? And the people we were talking to said, yes, please.
Pitch at Palace was a great idea. It was an opportunity to bring investors and young innovators together so that investment could be put into exciting new discoveries. And in that sense, it was very successful.
Give me your pitch.
Okay, so basically NeoSlip is an easy device to help older people put their compression stockings on.
Within 3 years of the scheme launching, over 200 businesses were said to have benefited from Prince Andrew's charitable work. The Duke of York explained at the time that the project wasn't just about investing.
And it's been very clear to me that entrepreneurs need more than just money. They need business partners, they need mentorship, they need customers, and they need network, and, of course, investors. I am looking for more corporate partners to enable Pitch to grow into a wider community of people striving to support our future prosperity.
This was perhaps his equivalent of what Prince Charles had done with the Prince's Trust, or what the Prince and Princess of Wales have done with the Royal Foundation. It just fitted into the sort of variety of engagements that members of the royal family did, but just in this context of business, which I think made it distinctive for the royal family and for Prince Andrew himself.
I thought it was quite innovative. I thought it was a really good idea.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Life was good for the Duke. Pitch at Palace was proving to be a hit, and the idea had gone global, as Andrew himself explained on the charity's informative video.
What began as a local initiative has become a global journey, with events so far in Estonia, Malaysia, Mexico, and next year in the Middle East, Australia and China. All of them promoting the United Kingdom as a key market and providing opportunities for our entrepreneurs to connect with overseas investors.
The United Kingdom wasn't big enough for Andrew, so Pitch in the Palace here are, in Britain, Northern Ireland, and he decides to go global. He wants a world stage. You can see the opportunities.
Pitch at Palace, on the face of it, was very successful. 865 entrepreneurs, 60 different countries, and almost 4,000 different jobs. Those numbers are very impressive.
Pitch at Palace was a charitable endeavour. So why was a commercial arm also set up? Pitch at Palace Global Limited.
When Prince Andrew was running Pitch at Palace, he would be supported by the sovereign grant as a working member of the royal family, like all the others, fundamentally. So again, that makes it more questioning and unusual for him to create this underpinning company, presumably for private gain.
It's not uncommon for there to be a commercial arm to a charity. So, for example, for commercial trade, a company to the side. That's usually for things like the shops and the like, and then that pays into the charity.
Pitch at Palace was a charitable endeavour set up to help budding entrepreneurs. But Pitch at Palace Global was a private, limited business, and it didn't have to follow the same rules and regulations as a charity or a not-for-profit. What it looks like is that Andrew was very much blurring, or his people were very much blurring the lines between what was allowed and what wasn't, as a working member of the royal family.
I mean, the statistics are pretty good. What, £1 million worth of investment?
1.1 billion.
I thought it was £1 billion, so I can actually claim that I was right. Anyway, shall I ask the question again?
Pitch at Palace had generated £1.1 billion of economic activity since it was founded. But did Andrew see any of that himself? Buried deep in the contracts was a line that says Pitchett Palace Global, the private company, not the charity, would take a percentage of their business.
You discover Pitchett Palace Global, he has this 2% clause. So he takes a cut. How much did he get? Do we know? No, because they won't tell us. And I think that's absolutely wrong.
One thing that I would be looking to do if I was going into business with Prince Andrew is just understand exactly what the arrangements are and what he's actually providing. If you were going to go into business with someone who wanted 2% of your business, you would really need to understand very clearly what they are offering you and what you're getting out of it. If there isn't any rationale for that, then you would not enter into such an arrangement.
It emerges when you look into the detail of this that actually there was far more in it for Prince Andrew than had initially appeared. And this wasn't just Prince Andrew doing the right thing. There is a sense that Prince Andrew was also creaming off some of the cash for his own personal gain.
Not only was he benefiting from the good reputation of Pitchett Palace, he was also benefiting from all those entrepreneurs that he was supposed to be helping.
Is it right that a member of the royal family should set up some sort of charitable enterprise and off the side of it have a commercial enterprise that's lining their own pocket? I think most people would say, no, that's unacceptable.
And Andrew needed the money. In 2018, his youngest daughter, 28-year-old Eugenie, married Jack Brooksbank in a ceremony that reportedly cost more than £2 million. And although the Duke's contribution to that is unknown, it's thought he coughed up a significant chunk.
The exact costs of Princess Eugenie's wedding to Jack Brooksbank aren't known, but it's been estimated that it was somewhere in the region of £2 million, perhaps even more. Traditionally, the father of the bride would have footed the bill for a wedding. Nowadays, more likely that the parents of the bride and groom might both contribute, or the bride and groom themselves. I mean, this is no ordinary wedding, though, is it? Taking place in the grounds of Windsor Castle. And I think it's probably likely that the Queen will have made some contribution, Andrew and Sarah Ferguson as well, and potentially the Brooksbank family.
But the cash was flowing in.
We know that large sums of money were coming in to Pitchett Palace, particularly after they set up a branch in China.
And brought in to run Pitchett Palace China, as well as handle Prince Andrew's business deals in the country, was a man called Yang Tengbo, also known as Chris Yang.
Andrew said he had met Yang Tengbo through his job as a trade envoy for Britain.
Chris Yang was educated in China. He then came and did a master's at the University of York here and set up various businesses. His role really was to promote Pitchett Palace in China, so they ran a series of roadshows there. They brought in investors and entrepreneurs. So they basically franchised the business into various countries, and he was told that he was acting in effect as Andrew's business advisor. So he was presumably doing other things apart from Pitchett Palace.
But things were about to go from bad to worse.
A man alleged to be a Chinese spy with close links to Prince Andrew has been barred from entering the UK over national security fears.
Yang Tengbo was later named as the alleged spy at the centre of the scandal, as were his ties to the royal, shown here in this glossy promo video released by the charity.
We can now name the man next to him here in the middle with glasses is Yang Tengbo, known before today only by the code H6.
Yang Tengbo uses the name Chris Yang. At the Immigration Tribunal, he was known as H6. But it was very clear who this was very early on because they described him as a 50-year-old. And we know that the person who was clearly involved with promoting Andrew in China was a 50-year-old called Yang Tengbo.
It was June 2011 when Yang Tengbo was going into the palace twice in a week. So this was while Andrew was still a working member of the royal family. His name still appeared on the court circular, which is the kind of official record.
While specific claims remain a secret, Mr. Yang is alleged to have obscured his links with the Chinese government and had a deceptive element to his dealings in the UK.
So close was that friendship that Mr. Yang was invited to Prince Andrew's birthday party. He had been to Buckingham Palace, he'd been to Windsor Castle, he'd been to St. James's Palace, but he had been banned from the UK because he was deemed a threat to national security.
He was not only banned from coming into the country, but he had his appeal to overturn that ban quashed, and it's still upheld today.
Mr. Yang has insisted he has done nothing wrong or unlawful. In a statement, Prince Andrew said that he had stopped all contact with the man, who he met through official channels. But the issues continue to mar the Duke of York's reputation and his money.
One just has to worry about how compromised Andrew was as a result of this association.
To get so close to a Chinese suspected spy, take him to Windsor Castle, to St. James's, and allow him really to become a business manager for one of his ventures. It's just appalling judgment, and it's almost as if anyone waves a checkbook in front of him, he's like a moth to a light. It's irresistible.
But worse was to come when the Duke's personal life caught up with him. Andrew stepped down from his role with Pitchett Palace in 2019, and the charity arm was dissolved.
I'm looking at Companies House here for Pitchett Palace CIC, which is a community investment company, effectively a charity. Looking at it, the last accounts were to the 31st of March 2019, and then in 2021 the company has been struck off the register.
However, the private company Pitchett Palace Global Limited is still running, with Andrew maintaining majority control.
The problem is that Pitchett Palace Global continues to this day. He draws money from it. It still provides accounts.
So I have in front of me Companies House, and on that it shows that the person with significant control of this company is His Royal Highness the Duke of York KG. He is the sole person listed.
One wonders where the money's going. He's a man with lots of fingers and lots of pies.
Now, Andrew's finances are really being put under scrutiny. I think more things will come out. I think it's going to be very, very uncomfortable.
Coming up, a rich friend with a dark past.
He moved from looking like a dodgy prince to a bit of a perverted dodgy prince.
He knows exactly what he's done, and I hope he comes clean about it.
Financially devastating legal battles.
That's a colossal sum. I mean, an amazing amount of money to pay to a woman you claim you've never met.
And a scandal that nearly toppled the monarchy.
He is seen with his arm around the waist of this young 17-year-old girl, then not much older than his own daughters.
By 2019, questions were being asked about Prince Andrew's business dealings. Once adored by the public, he had been engulfed by scandals.
Now, American financier Jeffrey Epstein, once a friend of Donald Trump and Prince Andrew, has been charged with federal sex trafficking offences involving minors. Today, he's been charged with abusing dozens of underage girls, some as young as 14.
Prince Andrew was struggling to escape the ghosts of his past. A former friend, financier Jeffrey Epstein, was arrested for sex crimes and imprisoned to await trial.
Jeffrey Epstein had recently been arrested, and everyone was asking Andrew, what are your links to this guy?
Andrew was allegedly introduced to Epstein in the late 90s by Ghislaine Maxwell, daughter of media mogul Robert Maxwell.
Jeffrey Epstein and Prince Andrew were introduced in 1999, and they became bosom buddies. They went on shooting weekends. This is with Ghislaine Maxwell. The three of them were thick as thieves, and they partied all around the world.
Andrew enjoyed the billionaire's hospitality at his various luxury homes, including, it is alleged, his private Caribbean island.
Prince Andrew has always been pretty vulnerable in the respect that he is, he loves the greatest things in life. He loves wealth, he loves beautiful things, beautiful women, beautiful places, beautiful holidays.
It's a very tangled web when it comes to his friendships, his business relationships, and his own personal finances.
Why was he friends with Jeffrey Epstein? He was a financier. He could hook him up with business deals.
But Andrew's rich friend had a dark side. In 2008, he pled guilty to procuring an underage girl for prostitution. He served 13 months in jail. But shockingly, Andrew remained friends with him, staying at his Manhattan mansion in 2010.
It's really bad judgment to keep the company of someone who's been convicted of these types of crimes. But also I think it shows that he doesn't care what type of person he is. They're friends, he's got money, he has connections to money, Prince Andrew loves money.
A few weeks after Andrew visited Epstein in New York, his ex-wife was also revealed to have controversial dealings with him.
Prince Andrew's ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, added to the row over his friendship with a rich American businessman who is also a convicted sex offender. She admitted accepting £15,000 from Jeffrey Epstein, something she's now called a terrible, terrible error of judgment.
Jeffrey Epstein lent Sarah Ferguson £15,000 so she could pay off a debt. Okay, and in any other normal world, your friend gives you some money to pay off a debt, eyebrows aren't raised, but this guy was a bad guy. He is a convicted paedophile.
The public then learned that Andrew had arranged the payment from Epstein on his ex-wife's behalf.
The thing about Andrew is he's not shy, and I think he's one of those people that will just ask for money.
This was a huge misstep, a serious, serious lack of judgment. Prince Andrew just wanted money for this situation and didn't really seem to care where it came from.
So when Epstein was arrested again for sex crimes in 2019, Andrew's close ties to him spelt trouble for the prince.
So if Andrew's dealings with Epstein started off as financial dealings, they soon materialised into something much more sinister. He moved from looking like a dodgy prince to a bit of a perverted, dodgy prince.
About a month after Epstein was arrested, prosecutors released court documents in which Andrew's name was mentioned.
There's an expectation that among the 2,000 pages lies shocking revelations.
They contained a deposition from one of Epstein's accusers, Virginia Giuffre, formerly Roberts, in which she claimed Ghislaine Maxwell ordered her to have sex with Prince Andrew in 2001, when she was just 17.
These accusations were probably the worst thing you could ever have. And it was a terrible position for anybody to be in, anyone in the public eye, but even more so anyone in the royal family.
A photo of Prince Andrew features in one of the documents where he is standing next to 17-year-old Ms. Roberts.
He is seen with his arm around the waist of this young 17-year-old girl, then not much older than his own daughters.
And so this brought a different kind of attention to Andrew. This brought the kind of attention that endangered his position within the royal family.
The document states the photo backs up the teenager's claims to being a victim of sex trafficking and that there is no other reasonable explanation.
Giuffre claimed the photo was taken at Ghislaine Maxwell's London property on the night she alleged Andrew slept with her.
Roberts, now 36, alleges that she had sex with Prince Andrew at a property on this street and on 2 other occasions.
Just when it seemed the story couldn't get any darker, there was a development no one saw coming.
The disgraced US financier Jeffrey Epstein has been found dead in an apparent suicide ahead of facing trial on sex trafficking charges.
His past friendships with Donald Trump, Bill Clinton and Prince Andrew had seen them all deny any knowledge of his crimes.
It seemed scandal was coming hot on the heels, one after the other, with Prince Andrew. His involvement with Virginia Giuffre erupted all over the world's front pages.
Andrew denied the allegations and dismissed the photo as fake.
Ms. Giuffre, can I just ask you, you've spoken about Jeffrey Epstein today. Have you got anything to say about Prince Andrew?
But Virginia Giuffre was not going to give up.
He knows exactly what he's done, and I hope he comes clean about it. Thank you.
As pressure built on Andrew to respond, he made an astonishing decision. He agreed to be interviewed by Emily Maitlis on Newsnight.
For those of us in the media, we couldn't believe he was going to do it, or that the palace had actually allowed him to do it, because they know he's not very smart either. But in his arrogance, he had convinced them he could handle it.
In what is now one of the most infamous pieces of footage in royal history, Andrew responded to Virginia Giuffre's accusations.
I have no recollection of ever meeting this lady. None whatsoever.
You don't remember meeting her?
No.
Many found Andrew's explanations unconvincing, particularly when it came to the more personal details recalled by Giuffre.
She described dancing with you,
No.
and you profusely sweating, and that she went on to have bath, possibly.
There's a slight problem with the sweating because I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat.
And when the whole world watched it, they were their jaws were on the floor. They couldn't believe what was coming out of this member of the royal family's mouth.
Photos would later appear of Andrew from the previous year, leaving nightclub China White apparently sweating. He went on to give an astonishing alibi for the night he was alleged to have slept with Giuffre.
I was at home. I was with the children. I'd taken Beatrice to a Pizza Express in Woking.
In 2001, the average Pizza Express customer spent £11.60. By contrast, a magnum of champagne in China White nightclub cost an estimated £1,200 when Andrew visited in the year 2000.
Why would you remember that so specifically? Why would you remember a Pizza Express birthday and being at home?
Because going to Pizza Express in Woking is an unusual thing for me to do.
He showed no contrition. He didn't apologise. He didn't address the actual issues. He just made excuses and came across as a bit of a buffoon.
He never showed 1 ounce of sorrow or pity for those young girls. And I think for all of us, that's what kind of smacked us in the face.
Do you regret the whole friendship with Epstein?
Now, still not.
How can you say that you don't regret your friendship with a convicted paedophile? It's just beyond belief. And the crazy thing at the end of it was, he thought he'd done very well. He thought it had all gone swimmingly.
Only 4 days after the Newsnight interview was broadcast, Buckingham Palace announces the beleaguered prince would be stepping down from royal duties.
How could that person be a part of the royal family? How could that person be a spokesperson for the UK? How could we, as a general public who fund that person's life, be associated with such a person?
Now no longer a working royal, it meant Prince Andrew would not receive his allowance of £250,000 a year.
But that money that he got as a working royal that would have paid for his suits, his travel, some of his staff, that went. And so quite quickly he had a decision to make. Could he pay for this himself, the staff, the suits, the travel, or was he just going to get rid of it all? And getting rid of it all when you're Prince Andrew is not an option.
I think that he thought that was just temporary. Maybe he had been told that, just ride it out over a couple of months or a couple of years and it will all go away. The old thing with Andrew, put your head in the sand, hope everything just calms down.
But it didn't calm down.
Virginia Giuffre is suing Prince Andrew, accusing him of sexual abuse when she was 17 years old. Tonight, her lawyer tells us how it came to this.
Nearly 2 years after the Newsnight interview had forced Andrew to step back from royal duties, Virginia Giuffre filed a lawsuit in New York against him for sexual assault. He was no longer just mentioned in the charges against Epstein. Now he had to fight a legal case focused solely on him.
That's when the money tree really started to be shaken, because he hired a lawyer.
His lawyer was reported to cost an estimated £1,600 an hour.
So we got this Hollywood lawyer, Andrew Brettler. He was an attack dog. His nickname's the Attack Dog.
Andrew Brettler was someone that had experience in this in this kind of case, you know, defending powerful men who are accused of sexual abuse. Chris Noth, the actor from Sex and the City, was one of his clients, as was Armie Hammer.
It has been estimated that Andrew's legal bill from Bettler eventually came to an eye-watering £1.6 million.
And that's classic Andrew. You know, how do I get out of this? Do I apologise? Do I approach Virginia Giuffre and say, OK, can we kind of sort this out? Or do I just get loads of money, splash it at the problem and hope it goes away?
For a court date to be set, papers had to be served in hand to Andrew at Royal Lodge. But over the summer of 2021, he vanished without a trace.
He ran away to Scotland. He hid with his mother up in Balmoral. It meant that legal papers couldn't be submitted on him at Royal Lodge.
With his legal costs mounting by the day, Andrew avoided Giuffre's representatives for nearly a month. The papers were eventually served to him via his LA-based lawyers. A royal in court for serious crimes had once been an unimaginable scenario, but Andrew now faced a very public and very damaging legal battle.
But yesterday, a judge denied the prince's motion to dismiss the case and said the royal must answer to the allegations.
With his reputation already in tatters, Andrew's prestige took another blow.
The downfall of a duke stripped of every military title given by his mother and no longer known as HRH, the Queen casts out her favourite son.
For the sake of the reputation of the British royal family, he had to lose his military positions, he had to lose his charitable positions, he had to be a private person. And in fact, he was effectively banished from any kind of appearance in public with any member of the royal family.
Meanwhile, the wheels of justice still turned in New York.
The trial of Prince Andrew versus Virginia Giuffre is set to begin later in the year.
Potentially would have seen Prince Andrew on the stand talking about all the things that had happened or not happened. You know, royal on trial would have been pretty grim, to say the least.
But in February 2022, Andrew finally made a decisive move.
The royal family must have breathed a sigh of relief. Today, Prince Andrew settled the sex abuse case brought against him for an undisclosed sum.
After more than 2 years of legal wranglings, he came to an out-of-court agreement with Virginia Giuffre.
Andrew escaped, if you like, by the skin of his teeth, and by that I mean he escaped having to give evidence, he didn't have to make a sworn statement, he didn't face cross-examination in a very adversarial New York courtroom.
Andrew may have hoped the settlement would put an end to questions about his private life, but it just generated more, like how much did he pay her?
The sum was £12 million, that was the rumour. I'm surprised it wasn't actually more than that.
Inevitably, a settlement of that size demands questions.
It's a colossal sum. I mean, an amazing amount of money to pay to a woman you claim you've never met. I think people will rightly draw their own conclusions from that.
But it was to buy the silence of his accuser, who, let us not forget, had alleged that he, Andrew, had slept with her when she was underage.
Where did you get that money from? Because you're no longer a working royal. So where has the money come from?
We think his mother paid it. But again, it's a mystery. There's so many questions about this.
I don't see how he possibly can pay it. So it's going to have to come out of royal funds in one which way or the other.
Coming up, the disgraced Duke clings on to Royal Lodge.
I think Prince Andrew has an ego. He really wants to keep where he was. He feels he deserves it.
Butts heads with Charles.
And the king said, I'm going to withdraw my funds.
And digs around for emergency cash.
The suspicion is that Andrew and Fergie had to sell that chalet to fund the payment to Virginia Giuffre, but we just don't know.
2022 was a year to forget for Prince Andrew. He was forced to step down from all royal duties after reaching a multi-million-pound settlement with his accuser, Virginia Giuffre. But how was the prince going to pay her the reported £12 million and maintain his lavish lifestyle.
Prince Andrew's not a working royal, so he's not earning money from the royal family. The only source of income that we know of for Prince Andrew is his £20,000 a year naval pension, which is not a lot, it's nothing, and wouldn't even scratch the surface.
So people are saying, how can this guy who doesn't have a job, who's been stripped of his royal allowance, where is the money coming from?
As well as mounting legal bills and the Virginia Giuffre settlement, Andrew also has huge living expenses.
The Royal Lodge is a tricky one. Andrew's got a long lease. He signed a 75-year lease. He's been told that as part of his lease, he has to be able to afford the upkeep.
At a minimum, Andrew is required to cover the reported £260,000 annual rent, as well as a mounting list of maintenance costs.
There's a requirement to repair, renew, refurbish, and where necessary, rebuild. For example, the exterior of the property has to be painted on the outside with 2 coats of paint once every 5 years. Adding those figures together, you come up with some monumental sums.
But Andrew's grandest expense is the cost of his own personal security.
The security for Royal Lodge itself was somewhere in the region of £3 million a year, which the Queen was happy to pay once Andrew lost his Scotland Yard protection detail, as he did when he stepped back from royal duties.
Rumours have suggested his older brother King Charles may have loaned Andrew the money for the settlement and also the running of Royal Lodge.
King Charles and Prince Andrew are quite different, I think, when it comes to money. King Charles is a bit more pragmatic, a bit more frugal, and seems to be more aware of how his spending looks to the general public.
But there was more turmoil for Prince Andrew. Just 6 months after the settlement, his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, passed away. Charles ascended the throne and became king.
The death of the Queen for everybody was the saddest moment, and for Andrew especially, this was very sad because the Queen was a massive part of his life.
Andrew was hit with a double whammy, the death of his beloved mum, who was his greatest emotional support in the world. She had gone, and what he was left with was his brother Charles, who was entirely disapproving of him. He knew that the purse strings were going to be tightened under Charles, and he would have been very frightened about that.
It's alleged the Queen may have been helping Andrew with his mounting costs. But financial leniency afforded to him by his mother was soon to be stripped back, as Charles looked to streamline the monarchy's spending.
When King Charles III ascended to the throne, one of the things he really wanted to do and was quite passionate about was a slimmed down monarchy. So less overheads, less money spent on working royals.
Andrew was no longer a working royal. He'd been reduced to the ranks. He had no official duty, no official function anymore. Everything that he'd been used to and which he'd grown up familiar with had been taken away from him. But nevertheless, he was still living in a very expensive property at the king's expense.
With his brother now in charge of the royal purse, and rumours that the loan he afforded him had been recalled, Andrew, with seemingly limited options, desperately needed to raise more funds.
Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson bought a Swiss chalet in the upmarket resort of Verbier in 2014. It had 7 bedrooms, an indoor swimming pool, every luxury that you can imagine.
What's very interesting is that he bought it off a woman, a friend called Isabel de Roering, for £18 million. The question is, on what basis was the mortgage given to him?
Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson took out a £13.25 million mortgage and were allowed to pay the remaining cash balance in instalments.
Potentially, Prince Andrew's name may well have helped him here. His position as a prince and a member of the British royal family gave him credibility. What's he going to do? You're not going to imagine that a member of the royal family is going to do a runner with all your cash, is it?
But when Andrew needed to sell, To raise cash himself, the former owners claimed he had not paid the final balance.
He owed the people a debt of around £6 million. Now, that really speaks to how murky some of his dealings were. Why do you owe someone £6 million?
The suspicion is that Andrew and Fergie had to sell that chalet, Chalet Aurora, to fund the payment or part fund the payment to Virginia Giuffre, but we just don't know.
And this is just typical Andrew. It's never clear, it always involves money, and sometimes both ends don't meet.
In a separate deal, Andrew eventually paid back the remaining balance with interest, a total of £6.6 million, which allowed him to sell the luxury chalet for a reported £19 million. But even though Andrew made a tidy profit, the king mounted more pressure on his younger brother, publicly trying to squeeze him out of Royal Lodge.
Charles wanted to show, I think, to the public that he was taking on board public criticism of Andrew and Andrew's lifestyle.
Status and pride are causing Andrew a lot of trouble because he wants to stay at a Royal Lodge. It's incredibly expensive to run. Was it 30 rooms? Who needs 30 rooms like that? But I suppose it's his own mini palace.
King Charles has asked Andrew to downsize to the smaller and more affordable Frogmore Cottage that once belonged to Harry and Meghan.
Frogmore Cottage, it had all sorts of advantages as far as Charles was concerned. Security was one, there would be no additional security costs. It was smaller, more manageable. Andrew would be able to meet the cost of the property without having to resort to who knows what.
Frogmore Cottage, well, it's a 5-bed cottage. It's not 2 up, 2 down, it's grand itself, but I suppose for him he would see it was a backward step.
With Andrew seemingly refusing to budge, in a major power move, the king decided to up the ante.
The king said, if you don't, I'm going to withdraw my funds, so I won't be paying for your £3 million a year security costs. I won't be funding your lifestyle anymore. You'll be on your own to find your own money and work out a way that you can be self-sufficient.
King Charles isn't someone who relishes confrontation, particularly not within his own family. He doesn't want to evict his brother.
Charles knows it's a bad look for lots of money to be spent on Andrew. He doesn't like Andrew being seen out looking happy, driving around, waving at people, having an excellent life. So by removing the funding that he gives him, the kind of annual stipend that he would receive, and also the money that he'd pay for the security, that just puts more pressure on Andrew. So Charles said to Andrew, OK, go fund it yourself.
But Prince Andrew is still refusing to leave, claiming he can afford to stay there and front the £4 million a year running costs.
I think Prince Andrew has an ego, and his brother is now king, and he's still the spare. He really wants to keep where he was. He knows what he likes, and why shouldn't he have it? He feels he deserves it, and he's entitled to it.
But how could Andrew afford to pay Virginia Giuffre millions of pounds, and on top of that, more millions per year to stay in Royal Lodge? Some reports suggest that the late Queen may have left her son enough money in her will to enable him to maintain his extravagant lifestyle.
We kind of think that the Queen must have left Andrew something. I suspect it was done long before she died, knowing as she neared the end of her life that Andrew was going to be a problem going forward, but we simply don't know. I mean, Andrew, you must remember, was, it's always said, her favourite son.
The Queen would understand the significance of him wanting to stay there. She would understand that for him, that was his last remaining status symbol, and she wouldn't want that taken away from him.
But Prince Andrew has remained tight-lipped on his ongoing financial battle with his older brother, the King. All we know is that he has claimed he can support himself at Royal Lodge through legitimate sources.
The Keeper of the Privy Purse was asked to intervene to ensure that this was legitimate. He was given a verbal reassurance by Andrew and his representatives that that was the case.
It's really difficult when he says things like, it's a legitimate source of income. You know, your eyebrows will shoot up immediately.
We will at some stage find out where Andrew has got this money for Royal Lodge, and if history is anything, you know, to go by, if his past behaviour is anything to go by, then I think there could be a problem coming down the line.
Coming up, Andrew's business dealings are put under the spotlight.
We can see that over £200,000 was withdrawn in the last financial year. It's not clear where that money went, why it was withdrawn.
It looks terrible. He should be called out.
And is this the end of the line for the profligate prince?
Prince Andrew doesn't really have a future. It's hard to see how he can resume any kind of business life.
Prince Andrew's finances have recently come under extreme scrutiny. He's been cut off from the royal purse and forced to pay for the upkeep of his home, Royal Lodge. But would his older brother, King Charles, ever allow him to return to the royal fold and put him back on the family payroll?
Charles has said that Andrew's not going to get any more money, and the sovereign grant is going up from this year, I think it's about 86 million, it's going to go up to something like 136 million, which is a massive rise. And Charles has said you're not getting any of it. He's not entitled to any of it because that money is for working royals.
So Charles has had this delicate act to try and satisfy a public demand for some kind of punishment to be exacted on Andrew, and that has to be in the form of some sort of financial punishment, but also the duty he must feel towards his younger brother, the promises we presume he made his late mother to take care of him.
In the throes of financial difficulty, those close to Prince Andrew claim he is more isolated than ever before, rarely leaving Royal Lodge, his £30 million home in Windsor Great Park.
He's rarely seen out and about at any kind of public event. He doesn't venture into London like he used to a few years ago.
His life is golf and horses, and Sarah, and their kids. And thank God he has them, because I think he would have very little else.
Public opinion of Andrew is at an all-time low, and many believe more clarity is needed over the prince's finances.
There are so many questions about his finances, where it comes from, where he's invested it, who gave it to him in the first place, how he earned it, if he earned it.
Historically, he just likes to put his head in the sand, hope it all goes away. It would be far more beneficial to everybody if he was a little bit more honest, and so it didn't look like he was hiding anything.
He says it's all legit. Maybe it is legit. Prove it's legit. Let's see it's legit, because if he doesn't, there'll be that smell, that stench over him and his money forevermore.
But some of Andrew's business operations are available for us all to see. On the 3rd of January 2025, Andrew's private investment firm, Uramore Limited, which in 2023 had debt of over £200,000, was suddenly dissolved. However, the balance was paid off that year by a mystery donor.
All eyes are going to be him, and the media are always going to investigate him. So as he's closing up businesses, they're still going to ask why you're doing that, why have you even opened it.
Companies House also showed that half of the funds left in Andrew's private company, Pitchett Palace Global Limited, were mysteriously withdrawn.
We can see that over £200,000 was withdrawn in the last financial year from Pitchett Palace Global Limited. This was a company, the commercial arm of his entrepreneurial scheme, and that's of interest because it's not clear where that money went, why it was withdrawn.
We don't know what has happened to that cash, but clearly there's been a reduction in the balance. And the only other thing I can say based on the balance sheet is there appears to be limited activity in the company.
We can't say for sure that the money from that Pitchett Palace Global bank account was used to pay off the personal debts of Andrew, but it is very coincidental timing.
And in another twist, Andrew's unorthodox business practices may land him in even more hot water. He's been accused of using different names when registering his details on Companies House.
He's used different names to operate under Andrew Inverness being one. Yes, he is the Earl of Inverness, and royals don't technically have surnames like the rest of us, but it certainly means that some of his business dealings were able to sneak under the radar.
It looks terrible. It's not how we expect them to behave. They should be called out.
Despite some groups questioning Andrew's admin methods, no criminal offence has been committed. But what happens next for the disgraced prince?
Well, at the moment, Prince Andrew doesn't really have a future. It's hard to see how he can resume any kind of royal life, and equally, it's hard to see how he can resume any kind of business life.
And the latest investigations into his links with the alleged Chinese spy are putting more of a spotlight on the prince's finances.
I think Prince Andrew will continue to be a recluse. I think we will keep hearing, about his financial messiness. I'm not surprised if this legitimate source of income will fall through and maybe the siege of Royal Lodge takes another turn.
But how did Andrew, the Queen's favourite son, who was once a well-respected and loved war hero, fall so spectacularly from grace?
A convicted paedophile, a convicted gun smuggler, an alleged Chinese spy. When it comes to friends, Prince Andrew certainly knows how to pick them. He has always had a taste for the high life. And that taste for the high life was always going to lead him into trouble and controversy.
Prince Andrew's relationship with money is disastrous. It didn't matter when he was younger, but it matters now. It has brought disgrace on his family. He's greedy, and coming from the dynasty that he came from. It was all there for him, but he just wanted more.
I think he's ruined his reputation as a result. He'll never recover. He will go down in history as the greedy Duke of York.